Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's press briefing. The Chief Executive will speak before answering questions. Because of the infection situation, please maintain social distancing and keep your masks on. Use the microphone when you ask questions to facilitate interpretation. If there are no questions, Chief Executive. Good morning, everyone. This morning, I'd like to tell you about two things. First, my visit to Beijing. Two, the development of the infection situation. Previously, I've spoken to you about this, and I said that in order to inject vitality back into Hong Kong's economy as soon as possible, and in order to garner support from the central authorities in terms of economic support measures, the central authorities have been very positive to my suggestion, and they would make arrangements for me to visit Beijing. It's now arranged that I will go to Beijing next week. Our discussions will focus on economic development supporting measures proposed by the Hong Kong SAR. It entails a lot of different initiatives, so I will spend 3 whole days in Beijing next week. After that, I will go to Shenzhen and Guangzhou to speak to the municipality leaders about the development of the Greater Bay Area with Guangzhou, and further cooperation with Shenzhen. As far as I know, I will be arranged to attend coordination meetings with relevant ministries and commissions to hear replies to our suggestions. When I am in Beijing, I will visit a number of ministries and commissions relating to our suggestions. There may be some adjustments, so I can't give you specific details. All in all, after the morning EXCO meeting next Tuesday, I will set off. Well, because there is still an infection taking place here, I will have to stay in Shenzhen for 1 night before setting off to Beijing. My itinerary will cover about 4 to 5 days. Apart from myself, I will take with me 5 bureau secretaries with me. There is also the director for the Chief Executive's office. You can guess from the candidates the areas we're going to cover. We have the Secretary for FST, and we have Secretary for Transport and Health. We have Secretary for Innovation and Technology. We also have the Secretary for Food and Health, as well as the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is the latest infection situation in Hong Kong. In the past week, we have seen a stable situation and with signs that are dropping. For over a week, there has been 47 confirmed cases. 90% of them are imported cases. Only 5 of them are local cases. However, out of the 5 cases, 4 of them have an unknown source. Well, as I've reported in my monthly report, in relation to cases with an unknown source, 1 is already too many. The Center for Health Protection has conducted analysis over local unknown cases in the past 3 to 4 cases. They have not find any relations amongst these cases. From their initial assessment, it looks like that these cases are quite scattered in terms of profession, area, and other categories. We can see that the global situation is still quite severe. There are over 42 million cases, especially in Western European countries. We have seen record high new cases up to 10 to 20,000 a day. It is indeed worrying. With winter approaching, in general, viral infection is more rampant. We have about 90% of the cases that are imported cases, so we have to exercise care to try to minimize such cases. Currently, there are already vigorous and stringent measures in place. Still, we will closely monitor the situation to decide what other countries will be included in the specified areas. Altogether, with Belgium added, there are 14 specified high-risk cases. In relation to Spain and Italy, I have had discussions this morning about the possible inclusion of these two countries. In other words, people who come from these specified high-risk areas will have to produce, before they board, a negative test result. Upon arrival, they have to go through a mandatory 14-day quarantine. We will keep updating the list of specified high-risk places. We don't want to leave out any cases. We want to be as watertight as possible. We will take stock of our measures to see if there are any gaps that we need to plug. I said that in the past week, the infection situation has stabilized and there are signs that the number of cases is decreasing. We would like to take this opportunity to review our four-pronged approach: testing, tracing, quarantine facilities, as well as treatment facilities. We have to be prepared as best as we can to face a possible new outbreak. We have our testing capabilities enhanced, but it's only in terms of the public. In terms of the public sector, 7,000 to 8,000. In the private sector, 70,000 to 80,000. With this level of testing capabilities, we need to find out where we should focus on to reach maximum efficiency and impact. We're told by experts that people suffering from mild symptoms should be tested as soon as possible. Otherwise, they might be an infected case and they might be viral carriers. Currently, there are 46 general outpatient clinics offering free testing services. The distribution hours for sample bottle has been extended. The hospital authority will explore the possibility of extending such a service over weekends or public holidays. We will, as I said, review the situation to see how we can achieve a higher precision in terms of our effectiveness. A lot of Hong Kong people visit private clinics. The private sector plays an important role. I appeal to members of the public that should they have mild symptoms, go to see a doctor as soon as possible. Doctors should strongly advise such patients to take COVID test.
Second aspect of testing is, as you've noticed in our press releases, we have targeted testing programs for targeted groups, and we've started another cycle. Basically, for the targeted group testing program, it's been regularized. So in relation to residential care homes for the elderly and the disabled, we've conducted several rounds of tests for staffers. For drivers of taxis and public buses and minibuses, we have another round, as you would have read in the press release, as well as foreign domestic helpers newly reported to an employer's place. We also have a targeted group testing program for them. The third area is that recently, due to a small-scale local outbreak, we set up 4 temporary testing centers, and they've been well received by the public. For asymptomatic members of the public or those with mild symptoms, they find it very convenient to have local testing centers in their neighborhood. So we're going to set up 4 such testing centers in the territory. Altogether, 4 of them in Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and New Territories East and New Territories West. The 4 testing centers carry dual functions. First, for members of the public with such need, testing services will be provided by the government. Second, for targeted group or housing estates or small local communities, if need be, we can also expeditiously carry out tests for them. The other function is this. If there is a need to travel outbound for the purposes of using the health code or air travel bubble, some members of the public may need to obtain a negative result certificate, and they can utilize the centers for service at the fee. So we'll set up such centers so that private laboratories offering services for the public can also roll out services at a lower cost. Details will be announced in due course. And there have been many suggestions on a rapid test, and that the result should be ready in 6 to 8 hours. And the Hong Kong Airport Authority will roll out a trial scheme on a rapid nucleic test. Depending on the effectiveness of the rapid COVID test, we will consider applying more extensively to arrivals. Next, on mandatory testing, we are fighting this battle against the epidemic. Of course, we would urge members of the public to exercise self-discipline and to undertake the test voluntarily so that we can reopen the borders as soon as possible and our lives could return to normal. However, we do have a liberal society. Not everyone would act on their own volition. But for the purpose of safeguarding public health, we do require some members of the public to undergo tests. And the relevant work has been carried out under the Prevention and Control of Disease Ordinance. Over the past 9 months, under CAP 599, Prevention and Control of Disease Ordinance, we enacted 7 new regulations. And we're now paving the way for a framework for compulsory testing. However, we need to take a targeted approach. We're not suggesting that everyone in Hong Kong should go for compulsory testing anyway. Well, as we learned from the experience of the Universal Community Testing Program, it needs to be cost effective. And in other words, we are focusing on those with symptoms, those in minor outbreaks, and those in high-risk places and small communities that are under high risk. For example, the container terminal cluster and residential care homes. We are going to soon roll out another piece of subsidiary legislation on compulsory testing. The other area is on tracing. The Centre for Health Protection has been working day and night on tracing these cases with the help of the police. And previously, the Innovation and Technology Bureau started a tendering exercise on developing an app. And I'm happy to report that within this week, on a voluntary basis, users of mobile phones can now download this app so as to record the activities in a day. Now, for restaurants, fitness centers, taxi drivers, etc., would also appeal to these practitioners to install the app and use the QR code so that if a passenger, say, bought a taxi, he can just scan the QR code for the purpose of tracing. Next, on quarantine facilities, work has been smooth. Phases 3 and 4 of the special quarantine facilities in Penny's Bay will be completed by the end of this year. By then, there will be 4,000 special quarantine units available. As for treatment facilities, apart from the 1,100 beds in isolation under the HA, if need be, more second-tier beds will be ready. And at the Asia World Expo today, we have 2,000 beds on standby. It's not currently engaged at the moment because we only have 111 patients receiving treatment in various public hospitals. But if need be, we have 2,000 beds available in the Asia World Expo. And next to it, we are going to build a temporary hospital, and 800 negative pressure beds will come on stream. Work has been smooth. We believe works will be completed before January next year for use by the hospital authority. Finally, on social distancing, the various social distancing measures that should soon to expire by midnight this Thursday and Friday. And on this, we are going to make certain adjustments, but I'm afraid we do not have the prerequisites to totally lift them. And the Secretary for Food and Health will brief you on the details later today. Now, the key word is precision. That is, with infection control in place, how we can allow more businesses and economic activities with precision in terms of infection control, because all these measures have been having a great impact on their businesses. We are a service-oriented economy. For tourism-related industries in particular, I didn't understand that they are bearing the brunt under the current epidemic. It's always been our aim to resume cross-border connections, and we've been sparing no effort. We share the same aspiration as the public. We'd like to resume connections across the border as well. In other words, we'd like to waive the 14-day compulsory quarantine for inbound travelers as well. And in terms of technology, I think we're ready. The technical issues have all been resolved. You can just download a form and then upload the result back onto the website. However, we also need to liaise with our counterparts, and that's the mainland as well as Singapore for air travel bubble. We need to have an agreement. Recently, there have been 2 cases in the airport in Singapore, but this has not affected our agreement with Singapore. We have a good bilateral negotiation process. The aim is that within next month we can introduce the air travel bubble with Singapore. As for the mainland, as a priority, we are going to arrange for Hong Kong residents currently living on the mainland to come back to Hong Kong without observing the 14-day quarantine arrangement. This will happen next month. At the moment, we only have 2 borders operating. That's Shenzhen Bay Checkpoint and Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Well, we hope this will give a good start so that in a progressive manner, we can allow people to travel to and from the mainland as soon as possible in the future. Now, I have laid out the framework, and once the measure is ready, the relevant bureau chief will brief you on the details. And that's all from me for the time being. I'm happy to take questions.
Please raise your hand Well, we will give you a microphone when you have been selected. I'm from Now TV. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to ask about your Beijing visit. Previously, you said that you would leave at the end of this month. What's the reason for the delay? People do look forward to your policy address. What is the timetable for the delivery of the policy address? What's the latest? In relation to mandatory testing, are you concerned about human rights issues? What's the stance of the government? The third question, in relation to Chen Tong-kai case, Mrs. Poon has been appealing to the Hong Kong government to allow her to act as the middleman to liaise between the two places. What's the stance of the Hong Kong government? Would you talk to her? Thank you for your three questions. First, indeed, about 2 weeks ago, I made an announcement here. I said that I would like to go to Beijing to garner support from garner support from the central authorities. That's why I have to delay the policy address. At that time, I said that was at or around the end of October, in around the 20th, because that was the message I got. As you understand, that the 5th plenary session of the CCP Central Committee started yesterday. I will not visit Beijing when the plenary is in session. At that time, it was planned that everything would be done within 1 day. But just as I told you, with a new plan, I will spend 3 days in Beijing to visit different commissions and ministries. Early November will be a better time. So it's decided that next week I will set off. There is a slight delay in my visit to Beijing. It will not affect the timetable of the policy address. It's still scheduled to be delivered at the end of November. In relation to mandatory testing, when dealing with public health issues, especially something so important and so difficult, we're talking about a pandemic. We have to strike a balance. Sometimes the government will have to be swift and resolute. Say, for example, restricting measures on one's freedom. When you go to a restaurant, there can't be more than 4 people at a table, and beaches are not open. But I can give you a hint that in the afternoon there will be announcements about opening of beaches, so that members of the public can still make use of the warm weather to go for a swim. It is a balancing exercise. If you want people to accept mandatory testing, you will have to convince them that it is done in a circumstance that would achieve maximum effectiveness. Should that be an outbreak, I would like to know as soon as possible how many asymptomatic carriers there are. And for those with symptoms, in order to stop you from spreading the virus, we need a targeted testing program in place. With the legal basis in place, we will proceed along this direction in our implementation of mandatory testing. For the third question, in general, I don't want to have a detailed discussion about it because it will stir up emotions of two otherwise ordinary families. From what I understood from Reverend Peter Kuhn, well, he's been keeping me updated about the situation. As far as I understand, Chen Tong-kai is still willing to surrender to Taiwan. There is one thing that we need at the moment is a visa to Taiwan. As soon as Chen Tong-kai has obtained a visa to Taiwan, I'm sure that it will kickstart the whole process. But the ball is not in the court of Hong Kong. As soon as Chen Tong-kai has a Taiwanese visa, we will be more than happy to deal with all the facilitating work needed.
This is Natalie from South China Morning Post. During your trip to Beijing, will you discuss with the mainland authorities about your plan to extend voting rights to Hong Kongers in the mainland? Because the scholars warn about the risk of vote rigging and possible manipulation. So how would you respond to these concerns? Are you going to proceed without any possible public consultation exercise? And the second question is, over the weekend, there was a global campaign joined by over 30 countries to demand for the release of the 12 Hong Kongers being detained in the mainland. Has the government taken any further actions for the plight of the 12? And my last question is about the issue in Hong Kong U, because one of the mainland professors named to take up the leading role at Hong Kong U, but he was listed as a Chinese Communist Party member on Tsinghua's website. So as Hong Kong U's chancellor, will you clarify his background? Do you think it's appropriate to appoint a Chinese Communist Party member to take up a top role in a top local university? Thank you.
Thank you for the three questions. On question one, as I have said on two occasions at least, my trip to Beijing this time is solely on the economic side. That is, in light of the economic situation, which of course is very serious in Hong Kong, we need more support measures from the mainland of China, especially in light of the overall direction that Hong Kong should move to better integrate with the mainland of China, especially in the Greater Bay Area. So at the moment, there is no plan to talk about other subjects, including the one that you have mentioned. As far as the deliberation on the voting issue, this is not something entirely novel. It has been discussed in society and in the Legislative Council relevant panel for many times, as confirmed by one of the LegCo members in a recent article or a letter she wrote. So the public opinion on this issue has been very clear, but the point is, like many other things, especially those with a mainland dimension, it is extremely difficult to get a consensus on such matters. So the government is now revisiting this issue. I understand we have a previous view, but we are now revisiting issue, especially as demonstrated by COVID-19, that sometimes, despite their proximity, it is just not possible to cross the border to do some legitimate things, whether in voting, in business, in visiting relatives. So at the moment, we are revisiting the issue, and when we have a clear view, of course, we will tell society of which proposal that we will pursue. Now, there has been a lot of so-called global campaigns against Hong Kong since June last year. This is not something that will catch us by surprise, because very unfortunately, Hong Kong has been caught in an international sort of campaign or attention, particularly vis-a-vis China. So, but the clear thing, as we have said many times in rebutting accusations from overseas politicians, the situation of the 12 fugitives is this one, that they have been suspected of bridging serious crimes in Hong Kong. Instead of staying behind and accept legal responsibility by going through the legal system, which is an independent judiciary, they have chosen to flee Hong Kong. And in the course of fleeing Hong Kong, they entered another jurisdiction. And as a result of that, they have committed another crime. So the first thing is they have to face up to the consequences of that offense in that particular jurisdiction, that is a mainland jurisdiction. And thereafter, of course, we will have arrangements to bring them back to face their criminal liabilities in Hong Kong. How overseas campaigners or the activists presented the situation, of course, is something we would not like to see. So that's why I said that we will we will be very conscientious and very robust in refuting any of those accusations. About Hong Kong University, yes, I'm the Chancellor of the Hong Kong U as well as other universities, but I'm sure you will appreciate that as the Chief Executive and the Chancellor, I will refrain from interfering with the university's matters and respect the institutional autonomy of Hong Kong universities. Hong Kong is very fortunate to have well-renowned universities, with 4 or 5 of them amongst the top 100. This is the strength that we will preserve in order to sort of take an active role in the Greater Bay Area. And I'm sure that each university will recruit and appoint the best academia to fulfill that mission. And in the appointment, I believe the university authority will look at the attributes of meritocracy. That is the academic achievement of the candidates, the competency of the candidates. I don't think they should or anyone should adopt other than these attributes in assessing the suitability of individual candidates. Thank you.
答多最後一條，請盡量簡短。右手邊打呔嗰位男記者。
Final question, please be succinct. This gentleman wearing a tie. Good morning, Chief Executive. I'm from TVB. About rapid tests at the airport, when do you think this will be introduced? How long roughly will the test take? And what about infection control measures in the airport? Do you need to follow up on them first? And will this pose another risk of local outbreak? And also about the controversy over the appointment of a senior official in the Hong Kong U. As the Vice Chancellor, what is your response? About the $2 transport fare concession scheme, is there a timetable? Sorry, I didn't catch the third question. For the $2 concession scheme for those aged 60 to 64, what is the timetable for its implementation? Thank you. 3 questions. First, as we all know, around the world, if traveling is to be resumed, we need to have a more rapid COVID test. The gold standard is the PCR test, but currently it takes a long time. So at the moment, we require inbound tourists to stay at a place for a long time, 8 to 10 hours, or to stay overnight in a hotel in order to wait for the PCR test result. If this bottleneck remains, it would be difficult to move a step ahead. We have R&D institutions developing rapid tests at the moment. However, the sensitivity of these rapid tests may not be on a par with the gold standards that we're using. This may lead to false negatives, rendering the whole exercise futile. So they need to put the test to trial as well. I understand the airport authority has been liaising with us. The CEO of the airport authority has met with me. They would like to see a safe and sound system set up at the airport for rapid testing for tourists. Within this week, they're going to kickstart the trial, but the linchpin to the success depends on the sensitivity of rapid tests, whether it's comparable to PCR tests. Let me guarantee that these rapid tests programs must meet our overall objective of infection control. Next question. Although I'm Vice Chancellor of the Hong Kong University, I do not interfere with the institutional autonomy of these universities. In terms of recruitment, appointment or replacement of the staff, I play no part in it. The Secretary for Education plays no part in it either. The Hong Kong University, the universities in Hong Kong are world-renowned universities. We have 4 to 5 universities in the top 100 chart. And this gives us an edge, especially in terms of I&T cooperation with Shenzhen. We have a good foundation to make contributions to this cooperation. We need talents to bolster our status, and these universities have been scouring talents in the academic sector around the world, and this exercise must continue to bolster the university's status. Now, I play no part in the recruitment process, but usually meritocracy is the key word. Definitely, they will look for talents with academic excellence and good standing. I believe the universities would continue to adopt this direction in their recruitment exercise and appointment exercise. Next question about the $2 fare concession scheme. Since its introduction, it has been very well received by elderly aged 65 or above. Hence, in January this year, I announced that if circumstances permit, we would like to have more beneficiaries under the scheme, and the government would consider lowering the age limit to 60 instead of 65, and it is expected that 590,000 more passengers would benefit from the scheme. However, this is also subject to a comprehensive review of the scheme. There is a consultancy study underway, which would look into any possible loopholes and abuse of the scheme and areas of improvement. In fact, there have been suggestions to widen the scope of the scheme to cover more modes of public transport. The study is still in progress. A few days ago, the Secretary for Labour and Welfare made a valid point. We've not stopped our effort. Our work continues, and we have not withdrawn the policy objective, and we are not putting it on the back burners. We're not sitting on our hands. However, at the moment, it is difficult to finalize the implementation schedule. We need to resolve a number of thorny issues, such as financial issues and problems of abuse. Thank you.